My pleasure. Tony is a local artist, digital image sculptor. He multi-talented man, actually, and he's been here in Santa Cruz for quite a while now.
About 15 years.
15 years. And Tony comes to us via the Midwest, Cincinnati and New York. Has a really, really interesting background. And today what we're going to talk about is a book that he co-wrote with his wife, Bonnie DeVarco, and it's called Way of Time.
Well, so actually I didn't co-write it. My wife wrote it.
Your wife?
I did the images for it. Yes.
So Bonnie's the writer,
yes.
and Tony's the photographer, montager. When you say they're montages?
Sure, yeah.
And it's a beautiful book, and it's called Way of Time, Spinning the Threads of Kairos and Chronos. Kairos, excuse me.
Chronos, yes.
Spinning the Threads of Kairos and Chronos. And it's a really interesting, beautiful book where there's a remembering of some very old wisdom. Some might say classical Greek, talking about the muses and the gods and goddesses, yes. And a lot of ideas that come from then.
Yes, and the lost time, and the people things that we've forgotten about time as well. Yes,
and particularly, I believe Bonnie really wanted to remember and conjure up some of the women,
yes,
some of the feminine.
Absolutely. Yes, we decided to one day in January. Actually, it was January 1st. We were talking to each other, and she was writing a piece for her blog, Scale Independent Thought, about Hypatia. And so she was telling me a little bit about Hypatia, and I got very inspired and went out to my studio and actually created a piece called, and she named it Unveiling Hypatia. And it was one of the pieces that I have in a show of mine that just closed in Cincinnati. I had 10 pieces, and 8 of them were from this book, Way of Time.
And that exhibition was called Way of Time, Recent Digital Photomontage, and it was at the Marta Hewitt Gallery in the Pendleton Art Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. No. Yes.
Correct. It was in Ohio.
Good
yes.
Golly.
Yeah, so Marta, it's interesting because Marta gave me my first one-person show in 1991. And so it's talk about cycles. I hadn't really talked with her for many, many years. Moved to New York, moved to Cincinnati, then moved out to California. And my father, who lives in Cincinnati, said, well, you have all this new work. Why don't you go share it with Marta? So I had to go visit him. This was over the summer. And she saw my work and saw the book, and she loved it and said, there's this thing called Photo Focus that was a citywide project that's all the arts institutes and the museums and the galleries had shows on photography. So he goes, I want to show your work in my gallery. And so we pulled it together very quickly, and it opened the 21st of September and then just closed a few days ago.
It's beautiful. I'd like to describe a little bit of your photo montages.
Sure.
They're vibrant, very colorful. You use real photographs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Well, so what's interesting is I don't consider myself a photographer per se. I think you have a long history of pictorial photography and then straight photography. Straight photography, Edward Weston would say you take a photo, the composition is done in your mind, and you take that photo, and that's the photo. The pictorialists, they actually were trying to imitate painting, and there was this big debate between that in the history of photography. I'm looking at using digital pixels really as my material, and so I backed into photography. I use photography, but I'm really using it through the eyes of a sculptor. So I build my images, and I'm not really worried about the composition of every photo I take. The composition actually happens when I'm sitting in front of the computer.
The composition happens as you're bringing these photographs together.
Yes, creating layers. The other sort of interesting thing, I am a full-time business person, so I work for Silicon Graphics, and I've been doing that since 1999. And one of the things that I had to do is I traveled around the world, and I had to do presentations. So one of the tools I used all the time was PowerPoint. So PowerPoint is probably one of the most clunky, and the PowerPoint presentations one thinks is probably the worst thing you could ever see. People roll their eyes when they have to see a PowerPoint presentation. Well, in 2007, I sort of found something in PowerPoint that really opened up my eyes. There was a little tool that allows you just to click on a particular pixel, and that takes that pixel and makes it transparent. And all that color of that same pixel, so if, let's say it's a green, all the color pixels in that photograph would go transparent. Well, that allows you then to lift up that photograph and then slide something underneath it, and then you start to build up your layers, just like you're building up a watercolor or a painting. So I started really actually using PowerPoint as the way to construct my pieces. So that was in 2007, and I've been at it for now 5 years.
I'm completely nonplussed. Are you saying that you build these incredible photographs
in PowerPoint?
In PowerPoint,
correct.
Good golly, I think I'm going to keel over, Tony. I can't believe it.
Yeah, so
I assumed it was in Photoshop or one of these real powerful but very difficult to use.
Yes. Well, so my whole thing when I was a sculptor in the 1980s, I wanted to use basic materials. So I worked with rope, I worked with stone, and I worked with just found objects in a sense. So I wanted to. It's not about the technique. It's actually how do you use what's at hand. And so I wanted to try to find something that was, kind of not tricky or anything like that, because Photoshop, you can really make things look amazing, but it has a Photoshop look. So in a sense, I create a look, because what I do is I build it in Photoshop or in PowerPoint, and then I save it as a TIFF, bring it into like Elements, which is a Photoshop thing, and I just do color balancing and cropping. That's really all I use for that. But yeah, that's what I use, and I know that hopefully we'll be showing some of the pictures in the video so that you'll be able to see this.
That's right, folks. Tony is talking about, if you go to artistonart.com, you can see many of the guests, most of the guests. There is an accompanying video of us here in the radio station. And with Tony's video, I will be inserting pictures of his photo montages so that you can see what we're talking about. They're spectacular. You use a lot of celestial images from the universe. So
that was galaxies. The other sort of interesting thing. So not only do you want to find pixels, which is with your camera, as you see shapes, colors that attract you, you take a photograph, it becomes part of your visual archive that you can then bring into a piece. But the other thing is there's an amazing amount of imagery that's out there that's royalty free, that's from NASA. So I was in Japan. I've been to Japan 10 times now, and I was very inspired by Japanese art. And one of the periods that I was specifically interested in was the Momoyama period, which was the 1640s, 1650s. And the striking thing about the Momoyama period was these beautiful screens that the main thing would be gold leaf. The gold leaf would be the ground, would be the sky, and then you'd have the imagery juxtaposed against that gold leaf. So one day I went in and I said to my wife, Bonnie, I said, I want to create digital gold leaf. And she's like, let's go online. So we started looking around, and, you look at fool's gold, or you look at other pictures of gold. But around that same time, NASA was posting some amazing images of Venus. And when you went to the NASA website and you looked at Venus, in these photographs, they were this incredible gold color, very, very high res. I was able to download those for royalty free, and then I cut them up into irregular shapes, and then I did some post-processing to them to create digital gold leaf. So those digital gold leaf then became sort of the underpinning of a lot of my work in the 2008-2009 period. So it gives it that incredible glow to it that you see.
Yeah. And you use many different images, that is figures, and I see right now a Buckminster Fuller geodesic circle, and you are very closely related with Buckminster Fuller.
Well, not a family member,
not
but yes,
a family way, but in a life way.
Yes,
right?
yes. I was fortunate enough to be living in New York City, and I was working for a sculptor named Marta Hewitt, and living down the street from where he had his studio. And then a block away from that studio was another famous sculptor named Osamu Noguchi. And Osamu Noguchi and Buckminster Fuller, I think they met in the 1920s, late 1920s, 1930s. They were lifelong friends. And this was 87, 88, that I got to meet both De Suvero and Noguchi. And the interesting thing is, working at his studio then that became a museum was Fuller's granddaughter, Alexandra. And we became friends. And over the course of a couple of years, I met most of the family members.
And then you went on to be the director of the Buckminster Fuller Institute.
Correct.
From 1991 to 1995.
Yes, correct.
And another beautiful thing that came from that,
I met my wife,
Tony DeVarco. Bonnie was the archivist for the Buckminster Fuller Institute, which is where you two met in L.A.
Yes.
And then she helped actually bring it up here to Stanford.
Well, yeah, we first brought it after in 1993. We took it to Santa Barbara, and then in 1995, Bonnie and I left the Institute, and within a year and a half later, it was then transferred to Stanford, so it's here in the Bay Area now.
So there's a lot of Buckminster Fuller image, what do I want to say, symbols, kind of objects that he invented that are in here, along with, as Tony was saying, the gold leaf and the universe and galaxies. In my mind's eye right now, actually what I wanted to do is tell the audience, if you want to take a look at what Tony's work looks like, Tony DeVarco, you can go to Flickr.
Yes.
And
I decided not to do a website because I felt like, why? I've been basically documenting in my work on Flickr. So you put DeVarco plus Flickr, and you'll be able to come and you'll be able to look at all the different pieces.
And the first one that shows up, which is your most recent piece.
Yes, it's part of a commission I'm working on right now.
For Cincinnati, for the Marta Hewitt Gallery?
Well, it's a corporate commission. It's just basically architectural, historical areas within Cincinnati. It's loosely called Cincinnati Reflections, and so there's a lot of obviously historical pieces, and I'm working with the museum. There's various museums I was there for a week taking photographs, so I'm right now sort of working through. I have to produce 7 pieces, and I probably will end up doing 15, 20 in order to deliver the 7. So you'll see a few in the first page.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't know if those are the ones that are going to go.
We don't know. So I just keep on working until I'm sort of don't want to do it anymore, but I have to deliver it by February. So they have to be printed. The big ones are going to be 7 feet by 5 feet. They'll be very large, large prints on artist paper, framed. So.
And they're very memorable, folks. I just got to tell you. So I just glanced at Tony's Flickr page just for a second, and it's burned into my mind. And so it's a picture of the back of Mickey Mouse.
Well, it's actually Pinocchio.
Oh,
that's Pinocchio. So it's interesting. All these photos were taken at the Cincinnati Art Museum. So,
and then is it the Venus de Milo? No, it's Aphrodite.
It's a sculpture of Eve. And it was done in the 1880s. By a Cincinnati sculptor, and then there's a piece by Marta Hewitt.
De Suvero, who's a big red steel, is it? Yeah. Sculpture, and then the sky.
Yeah, there's everything that's there. So the other thing is, it's all about the context of. So if I take a series of photos, I try to montage that same day, the same sort of area, and so.
So it's a site-specific work.
Yeah, in a sense.
And for this would be very apropos, since it's a commission for a Cincinnati corporation.
The funny thing about that piece, though, Nada, is when I was photographing Pinocchio, This is a sculpture that's outside. It's done by Jim Dine, who's a very famous artist who was from Cincinnati. And this is about an 8-foot size bronze sculpture, but of Pinocchio. And from behind, when I photographed it, there's this large radio tower way off in the distance, but just happens to be right where the nose would be. So if you look at it, the nose, it looks like the tower is its nose going out into space. It is the funniest thing that I just had to laugh and had to be part of the piece.
You are listening to Artist on Art, and I am speaking with Tony DeVarco, one of our own local artists. He is a sculptor by... no, he's not a piece of marble. He's a live person. He's a sculptor by... you got your MFA, or you were working on your MFA?
I got half of my MFA, basically, and Master's in Arts Management and a degree in Economics as well. So I definitely have the business and the art. I try to do a little bit of, try to keep it going.
You got to do it all.
Absolutely.
And you've done performance art. You've worked been
part of performance art earlier on in my career. Co-wrote and co-directed a play on Fuller, Buckminster Fuller. It's called Buckminster Fuller In and Out the Universe. I created a lot of set designs for performance artists in New York City and in the Midwest. So I definitely enjoy the collaboration of artists, architects, dance. Those are the things that really make me happy. Temporary type of things. So.
And also you enjoy creating kind of it's installation art that you're helping.
Many years ago, yes. So I haven't done that. So right now I have a very small studio. It's a laptop and a screen. So I have everything's in my mind right now. So maybe my next phase, I'll have a studio where I can do those kind of good things. We all know that Santa Cruz is an expensive place to have a studio.
Yeah. Well, I just want to give a little secret out to our audience. There's some plans happening so that we can get Tony to create an installation at my studio for First Friday coming up.
Sometime we'll do something like that. Yeah, we'll do some projections of these images. I think would be really fun.
Yeah, some giant projections because they're giant pieces.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to do a little reading, kind of in honor of Bonnie,
that would be really nice.
From the book Way of Time, Spinning the Threads of Kairos and Chronos.
Correct.
And this piece is called Pas de Deux. And again, it was written by Tony's wife, Bonnie DeVarco, and it's accompanied by a beautiful painting that has a figure, and it has the universe and
so what you're looking here, and we'll probably put it in the video, which would be good, is this dance between the stars, which are the seven sisters or the Pleiades, plus the vortex of an ocean down in Point Lobos. So that's actually water. So the water is the vortex, and then you have the stars behind. And the shape of it is actually almost like a man dancing, right? And in response to the woman who's there. And when my wife came in and she saw it when I was working on the piece, she immediately said, "This looks like a dance, pas de deux." So she came up with the name.
And Bonnie is also a dancer.
Absolutely, yes.
So this is from their book, The Way of Time. Spinning partners, the sun, moon, and stars sweep across each other in an endless dance of procession. Everything is off balance just a bit, just enough to create a dance for two. Spherical bodies sweep back and forth, spinning cycles through unbounded space, carving gossamer trails in infinite time, offering centuries to the shape of our calendar year, precession continuous to wobble the sidereal and tropical years, offsetting the solar and lunar cycles just enough to require continuous intercalation of our ritual and civil calendars. As the dance of heavenly bodies continues, we find we simply cannot pin down time. And then there's a quote that accompanies almost all of the...
Yeah, a lot of the so we what we wanted to do is, Bonnie had an idea about ancient to modern time, and sometimes the work I had already done made sense that she could write about, and other times she would say, let's do a piece that I can then talk about. So yeah, that's was one of the pieces that was done before she had to write about it, though.
And the accompanying quote is by Buckminster Fuller. "Precision is the effect of any moving system upon any other moving system. The closer the proximity, the more powerful the effect. We do not pay much attention to Precession,
yes,
because we think only of our own integral motions instead of those of universe, though we are processing universe every time we take a step."
Yes. There's also another very beautiful quote, if you want to read it. There's a piece called Pause. It's at the end of the book. So it's a Walt Whitman quote. Right there, yeah. So I think, if we show the piece and then you read that Walt Whitman quote, that might be a nice thing to end the interview on.
Sure. Well, I don't know if we're going to end. We got a couple more minutes.
Oh, great. Well, there you go. I didn't know.
So this is how the book ends: "The way of time, spinning the threads of Kairos and Chronos." Pause. "I have said that the soul is not more than the body, and I have said that the body is not more than the soul. There is no trade or employment, but the young man following it may become a hero, and there is no object so soft, but it makes a hub for the wheeled universe. And I say to any man or woman, let your soul stand cool and composed before a million universes." Walt Whitman, Song of Myself. It's a gorgeous book, and I hope we'll get to have Bonnie come on and talk more about this book. Good. And there's a second book.
We're working on the second book. It's called The Light of Perception. And I've done probably about 10 or 15 pieces, and she's working on it, and we hope to be able to have it published in the springtime, and then there'll be a third book after that, where the name we're still sort of playing around with, but we see this as a trilogy.
A trilogy.
Yes.
And again, you're listening to Tony DeVarco talk about his work, The Way of Time, both the book, The Way of Time, Spinning the Threads of Kairos and Chronos, and also the recent exhibition that was just finished in Cincinnati called Way of Time, Recent Digital Photomontage by Tony DeVarco, who is a Cincinnati native. And how many pieces were in that?
There were 10 pieces in that show, yes. And so
that must have been really exciting for you.
It was very exciting. So it's interesting when you work with digital art, some of the challenge was, first, you're taking photos, you are mixing them up, creating these montages. On the computer screen, you think, well, this looks really great. The big challenge is, how does it look? How do you get it out of the computer? That's always the biggest challenge. And there's some wonderful technology. Epson and Canon and HP have these very high-end printers now that can print 60 inches wide or 44 inches wide. And there's these various art houses that are creating paper for that. So I work with a group called Breathing Color, and they create artist paper that's basically archival. It's acid-free. The inks are archival, so they should last for hundreds of years. And so, in a sense, you're creating something that can be either a one-of-a-kind piece if you want, or you can make it a multiple, an edition of 5 or 10 or something like that. So I've been able to get those pictures out, and to see them, when you see them large, it's actually quite astonishing, because you see a lot of the details that you don't catch in the different sizes that are on the computer. The other thing is, when you build these pieces, you have to imagine them large, because you might be working on a 5 by 7 inch platform, but when they're actually printed, they're maybe 5 feet by 7 feet. Right. So you have to think about, does it look good at the thumb
nail size,
or the sort of meso size, or the large size? They have to work on all levels. If you don't do that, then it's probably not right.
Well, I hope to be able to announce to my dear audience in a couple months that we'll be able to see Tony's pieces, maybe not on paper, but just as well projected.
Well, projected. I think that's the thing. I hope and look forward to maybe meeting some choreographers that are out there that are maybe looking for imagery to project behind their dancers and stuff like that. I look forward to any of that type of thing. That's the type of thing would really be a great thing for my artwork.
And again, if you want to see more of Tony's work, please go to Tony DeVarco plus Flickr.
In Google.
Google
it, and that's easy.
And then you'll also be able to go to Artist on Art, and you'll be able to see both the video of Tony talking tonight, as well as interspliced with images from his beautiful book. Thank you so much, Tony, for coming in tonight. Hey, everybody, stay tuned. We've got 2 more wonderful artists coming in tonight, Ran Wilson and Patty Maxson. Thanks again, Tony.
Thank you.